Like we talked about a week ago, this tour of shame, the walk of shame for the Houston Astros continues. It all came to a head again yesterday in Oakland. The A's and the Astros. The A's actually sweep the Astros, and we'll talk about them a little more in depth later on. But later on in the game, Ramon Laureano, one of the really best up-and-coming center fielders in all of baseball right now, he gets hit, the fifth A's player to be hit in the entire series, and then things got ugly. And it was actually Alex Cintrone, the former Arizona Diamondback, now a coach for the Houston Astros, who started talking some mess from the Astros dugout and said, "You want a piece of me? Come and get some," and got blocked, of course, by three Astros players as Laureano charged him. Another brawl ensued. A lot more contact here than what we saw with the Dodgers and the Astros. And I think the big difference here clearly is that Dodgers-Astros one, that was instigated by the Dodgers. That was a revenge moment right there. Whereas this felt like the Astros are kind of falling apart, and it seems like they are letting the outlook that baseball and its fans have for them really start to eat at them. They're struggling on the field, and clearly they're struggling to keep their composure right now.
Yeah, I mean, what's that great saying, speak softly and carry a big stick? That's definitely not what they're doing here. They're letting everything affect them. And not all the guys on the team cheated. But we don't know. We really don't know. The coach, Cintrone, is kind of like me. If I ever got into a fight against an MMA player, I'd probably push a bunch of people in front of me to not fight said player. I feel like that's what it was. It's like, I'm going to be big and bad, but when it came down to it, I'm not going to go after Laureano. So it was an interesting scenario. I think the A's where they're at, they probably shouldn't. Laureano should have just shrugged it off. But there's some tension. The A's probably feel like they were slighted from possibly going farther in the playoffs. Especially being in their division. Now, I don't know if it's a situation where the Astros felt like they needed to retaliate because the whistleblower was on the A's. That's what it kind of seems like. I mean, they probably won't say that in public, but that's what I think is going on. It's funny that the A's they didn't hit any batters, and the Astros hit 5. And the Astros are the ones that they need to kind of clean up their image. So it's a very interesting dynamic that's going on. And the Astros aren't playing terrible ball. They're not playing Oakland A's ball. But, but I guess, for everybody that likes getting their popcorn ready, I mean, that was a get your popcorn moment. It led off ESPN. I got several notifications about it. So Manfred may hand down some suspensions. I can't even talk, maybe to Laureano, but I think in the back of his mind, he's like, it's not COVID. So this is good.
Yeah, exactly. I think that you're onto something with the Mike Fiers situation. Of course, he was the guy who came out in that article that started this all in The Athletic back in the offseason, where he was saying this is what happened while I was with the Astros. And he also got lit up, of course, last year. I think the Astros scored like 11 runs in like an inning and two-thirds against him. So he clearly had a beef with the team even before all this. So I think there is that a little bit, but I really do think that this is starting to eat at these players and at their legacy, really. It's a lot of these young guys who, for years we heard about all the hype surrounding the Astros, about Carlos Correa and Bregman and Alvarez and all these rookie players who were going to be the face of this franchise and become the next dynasty in baseball. And I think that for many of them, they feel like that's probably forever tarnished. And I think for a lot of them, they're just annoyed. They're like, it's August, man. Like, I know the season just started, but it's been almost a year since this all broke. Let's all move on. And I think clearly MLB and the teams and their fans are not going to move on from it. And I think it's something that's going to last until next year. And when fans hopefully can come back to the stands and come back to the games, and they're going to hear it. I don't think fans are going to forget. These fans clearly didn't forget. We saw there was a plane that flew over the stadium that had something about the Astros cheating. I believe there were even a few members of the media who decided to come down into the stands on Friday night and boo the Astros because no fans were there to do it. So people are mad, and justifiably so. And I think the Astros got to get their composure and figure it out, because they're still a good team. It doesn't take away from the fact they're a good team. They're a talented team. But it's just going to keep happening until, one, MLB does something about it, and 2, they just swallow their pride and say, okay, it happened. We know what we did. People are going to think the way they think, and we just got to go play.
And that's the thing. Like, if you're a season ticket holder in Seattle and you got maybe, a bullpen, seat, or, wherever the stadium is, you're going to be on camera. I'm sure those guys looked when the Astros were coming to town, made the sign, and were ready. Well, now the sign probably didn't get thrown away. It's a situation where, when next year, then I'm going to use the sign. So everybody's waiting. Nobody's going to forget. Maybe a few people forget, but I think anybody that's that devout of a fan, especially Dodger fans, I mean, you're going to see those signs. You're going to have to knock the dust off of them because they're going to be in people's closets for this year. But when there's allowed to have fans out there, or wherever there may be a public appearance, those signs are going to get used, and the Astros are just prolonging the shame tour.
Yeah, exactly. We saw it with guys with steroid allegations that it never went away. It may be the talk about it and the fervor around it kind of quieted down as their careers went on, but it never goes away. And I think it's going to be the same with the Astros, and they're just going to have to find a way to cope with this. And one final note here, because I think it bears mentioning, obviously, there's going to be big-time suspensions handed down. Laureano's probably going to get suspended. I'd imagine Alex Centrone is going to get suspended. I actually think Rob Manfred, if that Joe Kelly suspension seemed really harsh, just wait and see until this happens, especially after the Cardinals situation is getting out of control with COVID. Obviously, we know about the Marlins, and I think that he is going to have to put his foot down and say, look, we're going to hand out, 10-game suspension, something like that, something really extreme for a position player especially.
Yeah, I mean, God forbid there be a big brawl and then 5 guys get COVID afterwards, right? So that's another thing.
Yeah, I think he wants to I think he's going to send a message with this one. And unfortunately, Ramon Laureano might be the guy on the short end of that. And
do you think he's going to get more games than Kelly?
Just because he's a position player, I do. I think that he's going to get at least, I would say, bare minimum, he gets the same as Kelly, 8 games. And I think he's going to send a harsher message because I think the Joe Kelly suspension was a message to all of baseball saying, we're not messing around. We're taking this seriously. We told you guys not to get in fights, not to have contact with each other with these brawls. And at least that one, there wasn't a lot of physical contact. There was with this one. Yeah. Guys were rolling around. So I think that, especially with everything going on with the Cardinals, I think he has to send a message.
Do you think that, one last point on this, do you think when Manfred and these guys, these league officials, look at the tape, do they look at each hit by pitch and be like, he tipped his hat, he must not have meant it, or, that one looks like it was intentional? I mean, I think you got to look at that, right? So I didn't see the 5 hit by pitches. I didn't see those at bats. But you could usually tell when a guy's doing it on purpose or it's a pitch that got away from him, right?
I mean, 1 or 2 in a series, it's 2 or 3 even, 5 in a series, especially with teams that have already got a lot of tension. I think there is something there, for lack of a better term. So maybe that also factors into how much they suspend Laureano, and we'll see. But I think that he is going to
think about this though. What if this? I mean, I'm not saying it is, but what if this is the Astros game plan to be like, you know what, we're going to be hated. We're going to get beans sometimes. But if we get under some of these teams' skin, I mean, look, if they lose Laureano, they're the first place team right now. Yeah. And if the Astros lose their bench coach, I mean, who's on the winning side of this?
That's a great point.
The Astros are basically on the winning side of this now. So, I'm not saying they're doing that as a strategy, but it'd be a very, very dirty strategy. But I mean, you go around and you start taking out the best players on each team. It's a shortened season.
Yeah. I mean, are we going to really put that past a team that just cheated their way to a World Series to have a dirty strategy to approach this season? I think there are crazier things have happened.
Right.
Basically.